luck. Oh, together against the darkness. I walked the green hills of Earth. Not in my own body, of course. That would be extremely fatal, extremely quickly. If I were to be exposed to one gaze-phi of the horrific radiation bathing that planet on a daily basis, my brain would melt and then explode. My blood would boil and explode, and my outer integument would just plain explode once it was exposed to ambient dihydrogen monoxide, or what the humans call water. Such an innocuous name for a deadly thing. They call it ice when it's below its melting point, and steam when it boils. Yes, that's correct. They actually named it for each of its states. Worse, a good deal of their industrial development was powered by using the high-temperature vapor as a means of transferring energy from one system to another. If I were understanding things correctly, some of their machines still made use of it due to its extreme utility. Machines that you also incorporated forbidden material to generate the energy in the first place. It was almost a relief to find out that getting within death range of forbidden material was also dangerous to them. It wouldn't make them explode or even kill them instantly, except in the case of extreme exposures. But it had the chance of making them ill. The worst cases might die in 5 or 10 years. Oh, the horror. Yes, humans use sarcasm, too. I was very pleased to find that out. It's just one more thing that makes me glad. I was on duty that day, on the High Distant Knowledge. Ensign Serena Hernandez strolled alongside me. We'd made sure that the relative measurements matched up. The telepresence body I was controlling came to about elbow level on her. I had 4 locomotion tentacles for movement, while I used the other 4 to gesture at our surroundings. And I had each so much to gesture at. I had to give full credit to the humans. When they set about building a telepresence body for me, they spared no expense. My tentacles had the full range of sensory, motivation, and manipulation capability. The sensors that matched up with my eyes and auditory receptors were attuned to human-specific levels of sight and hearing. And my vocal apparatus was similarly set up to produce sounds that humans could hear. But the most amazing technology was the actual signal linkage. You understand, none of our species will ever be capable of venturing within the orbit of the planet they call Jupiter, which we call Red Spot for obvious reasons, unless we collaborate on the creation of much more robust shielding systems already got. I understand they're working on it, but they're not there yet. However, there's a few planets on the far outer range of their system that are more or less perfect for research stations. With their help, we've set some up, and there's talk of setting up a colony or 2. The humans seem utterly charmed by the idea, so all that's left is the engineering. All we really have to do is wear heat-reflecting suits on the surface when the planet, or the moon, depending, is facing the primary, and we're comfortable. And that's where the broadcast station for the telepresence unit is situated. Which leaves just one problem: the speed of light. Or rather, how slow it is when you're trying to send a signal from the edge of the human's solar system into Earth, and get back an answer within a reasonable time frame. When one message in and back out again can take up the entire working day, that's not exactly a great situation. The first few instances of the telepresence suits were tested out in and around the Pluto system. When I found out that name represents an ancient deity of the frozen underworld, I laughed so hard. Oh, laughter is another thing humans share with us too. Their version sounds weird, but I suppose ours sounds weird to them. Had theirs in a ship orbiting the Pluto-Charon system, while we were in a lab dug into the surface. We were close enough to one another that the light speed lag wasn't really a problem. But there's only so much cultural exchange one can do when you're walking around the corridors of a human spaceship. Still extremely interesting, especially their astrogation equipment, or a freshly built research laboratory. But then, the scientists came to the rescue. It turned out that another ship was orbiting Triton, the largest moon of the gas giant called Neptune. Both those names have links to the oceans of water that flood their planet. Remember that stuff? Molten dihydrogen monoxide. Yeah, that. Those are names of deities connected to their oceans. Thankfully, there's no liquid water out that way. It's all ice, which is the way I like it. The human scientists were running telepresence rigs in the lab, working hand in tentacle with our people. And the ideas were flowing thick and fast. They took apart an FDL drive. Don't ask me how those things work, and somehow turned it inside out, using some human-specific materials to stabilize. After that, it didn't go anywhere, but it pulse out a signal that was receivable up to a light year away. We checked, with delay that was less than the margin of error on the instruments they were using. So, that's how we got faster than light information transmission. It took them all of 3 seconds to figure out how to couple of these in on the telepresence circuit. And teared eyes how I ended up walking my human-built remote body over a series of gentle hills on far distant Earth, while sitting comfortably in a lab buried in the North Pole of Pluto. Light speed lag can bite my upper left tentacle. It turned out that Serena and I had been more or less tapped to be the unofficial ambassadors for our respective species, at least until they could work out how to establish official embassies. As such, our job descriptions had literally been rewritten to spend time each day comparing notes and getting used to each other's culture. Frankly, the more time I spent with her, and the more of our respective languages got ironed out in the translators, the less alien she seemed. Well, apart from being the equivalent of a walking, talking apocalypse event, I mean. The thermal and potential chemical energy contained in one human's body, if released all at once, would destroy the entire laboratory and kill everyone in it. Which was why the humans very carefully didn't even aim a radar beam at us. But all that aside, I liked her. She even went so far as to apologize for the name she had given our species, based on the appearance of the gay distant knowledge. Once I understood the terminology, I had to admit the name was somewhat apropos. Soap bubbles were supposed to be ephemeral and ridiculously easy to destroy. They were also rather pretty, as I saw when she produced a simple apparatus that created them with a puff of breath. Our entire species were even more fragile to humans than soap bubbles. Those could at least survive for tens of seconds unprotected in that ghastly environment. So I really couldn't argue with the name as given. And it didn't stop me from joking about what we should call humans, hell demons, lava monsters, or the like. Serena thought each new name was funnier than the last, which was the whole point of the list. Hillside we were on sloped down to a placid lake, reflecting the blue of the sky. I eyed it askance, reminded once more that the temperature that my telepresence link transmitted to me as pleasantly warm was significantly higher than the melting point of ice. Why, yes, we have indeed appropriated that word. And that we have indeed appropriated that word. Gaseous state, oxygen in the atmosphere all around. More than a little frightening, if I'd let myself think too deeply about it. The ground beneath my tentacles was covered with tiny soft blades of green. I'd been told this was grass. A wild-growing sessile life form that absorbed sunlight for sustenance. Given that this sun was throwing strong enough light to cast a very distinct shadow, I decided that it had made a wise choice in its evolutionary past. Our biologists would have entire new fields of study to play with once the information I was garnering made it to them. The sheer range of temperatures on Earth, all well above anything remotely survivable for us, of course, meant that they similarly had a huge range of life-supporting biomes. "What are you thinking?" Serena asked idly, lowering herself to a seated position. I adjusted my locomotion tentacles to assume roughly the same attitude. I was thinking how pretty the lake is, and how all this fits in so well here on Earth. She knew me well enough by now to finish the thought. But not where you come from. Progenitors, no. I shuddered at the notion. That much molten dihydrogen monoxide being placed there all at once? It would be like someone dropped a bomb. A large bomb. We didn't do bombs, or war in general. In the Concordat, our species had a well-earned reputation as pacifists and scientists. Newsal, doubts, Valentraul, Dewire, pious. She sounded amused. Dangerous landscape. She tilted her head. So, how'd your big brains like the samples of Invar we sent over? An odd metal, I said. If I'm understanding what they told me, it undergoes barely any thermal expansion or shrinkage. Also, it's magnetic, which is useful. What's it made of? Again? Copper and iron, as far as I know. She took a clear bottle from a clip on her belt and drank from it. Water, of course. I had to remind myself that it was below her body temperature, and that she needed it for survival. It was a strange universe. We've had it for a couple of centuries now. They used to use it to make clocks. I can see why. And I could too. With the massive temperature range on Earth, metal expansion or contraction would be a distinct engineering problem in some situations. We could never create something like that ourselves, while we can just barely work copper. Iron is far beyond our reach. But yes, they are fascinated by it. With it, there are new ideas cropping up all the time. Our joint ventures are proving extremely worthwhile on both sides of the table. That's good. I'm glad. She put the bottle away again. So, did you want to keep going, or head back? I think we can go on a little farther. Wait a moment. I raised one of my tentacles and indicated a puffy cloud that had just drifted into my line of sight. I've been seeing those, but I'm not sure what they're made of. Oh, water vapor. Serena climbed to her feet and dusted herself off. Water basically evaporates, then hangs around until enough of it gets together to form a rain cloud. I wasn't sure how expressive the face of the telepresence robot was, but I did my best to show concern. Water vapor. Steam? Isn't that dangerous, even to you? She chuckled then, and I felt relief. Serena might have been a native of an environment that would kill me in an instant, but she wasn't recklessly suicidal, so anything that she wasn't worried about was probably fine. No, water can evaporate at well under boiling temperature. Those are probably pretty cool, actually. Maybe 15, 20 degrees. If it came down to ground level as fog, I'd get a little chilly and damp is all. Knowing exactly what 15 of their degrees meant in our measurement, I found that statement all the more ridiculous because it was truthful to her. Chilly and damp. Right. The communicator built into the telepresence unit, warbled, and I cut myself off. Excuse me. I have a cold. Go right ahead. She began doing stretches. I activated the comm receiver. I'm here. What's the problem? The voice that came back to me was that of our lead researcher. We're going to have to pull you from the session. Words come through via the FTL network that the Tanarak are encroaching on our worlds, and we have to cease all non-defense activity. I'm afraid your interactions with Ensign Hernandez fall under that category. Wait, what? When did this happen? As you probably know, the Tanarak are a fairly violent, aggressive species that has caused problems in the past. They like to rube into our faces the fact that they were more able to handle higher temperatures than most species in the Concordat. By which I mean that our upper level of comfort was their lower level. Just the last day or so. They've been issued an ultimatum to stop, but they've ignored it. Their fleet's bigger and more powerful than before, and it seems that they've got information about the location of our home. Okay, that wasn't good. That wasn't good, Wall. Concordat members kept such sensitive information quiet, except from those species they really trusted, for just such a reason as this. And now, somehow, the Tanarak had it. So what are we going to do? Bunker down. Ask the humans for help. Hope for the best. Cutting link to telepresence robot in. Wait. A blinding flash of insight had just exploded in my mind, brighter even than the human's primary from Earth. Don't cut the link. Can you patch me through to the Tanarak invasion force instead? I need to be able to talk to them real time. Why? Kira, what can you do? I wasn't sure, but I was willing to try. Maybe something. Maybe nothing. But if we can stop them now, it's better than people fighting and dying, right? There was a long pause, and I suspected he was conferring up the line. Very well. We'll see what we can do. Thank you. My vision cleared, and I was looking at Serena once more. She was peering back at me intently, leaving me to wonder how she knew something was wrong. You've got a problem. It wasn't a question. Can we help? I hope so. Quickly, I filled her in on the Tanarak situation. Are you okay with me doing the talking? I have most of a plan, but I can't pull it off without your help. She grinned broadly as I explained what I wanted to do. Absolutely, she agreed. Operation Shove It Up Your Ass is a go. I considered that. I'm not sure Tanarak have excretory orifices. Their biology is based around making use of everything they eat. Won't be a problem. Her expression grew sharper. We've got a long military tradition of taking individuals who desperately need a brand new asshole torn and obliging them in that. Somehow, I believe you. In that moment, I almost pitied the Tanarak. Almost, but my comm unit warbled again. I keyed the receiver. I'm here. Can we do it? Yes, we can. High Command isn't sure what you intend to achieve, but any delay is a good delay. Patching you through now. I heard pops and crackles of static, then a long period of no sound, then a harsh voice came on the line. This is the Commander Prime Ultra of the glorious Tanarak Liberation. What unworthy being seeks my audience? Oh, I am beneath your notice. Merely being an assistant astrogator, I said smoothly. But I wish you to take notice of this person standing next to me. I cut in the feed from my telepresence robot's visual sensors and ensured that the commander's voice sounded over my speakers. Meet Ensign Serena Hernandez. Doctor Tostomo. She's a human and a junior member of their military forces. Humans are our allies. If you attack us, they will attack you right back. That would not be a good move for you, Commander Prime Ultra. An image popped up in my field of view of the Tanarak officer. In relation to Earth animals, they looked somewhat like stocky bipedal crocodiles, in purple and green. The commander sneered at the image of Serena. It doesn't look all that tough to me. Huh! No fangs, no claws. They might surprise you, I said lightly. Ensign Hernandez, do you think you could hit that lake with a rock? Pretty sure of it. She bent down and located a chunk of stone about the size of the end of my tentacle, then hefted it thoughtfully. I moved backward a short way so I could catch all the action, just in time for her to rear back and hurl the rock in a huge arc. My sensors followed it perfectly until it landed in the shallow end of the lake with a tiny white splash. That means nothing, the Commander Prime Ultra declared, though I thought I heard a little bit of doubt in its voice. Humans are clearly a high-gravity species, but throwing rocks will never win a war. Tell it that if they resist our advance, we will liberate their homeworld along with the rest of you, low-temperature weaklings. I said. You are laboring under a misunderstanding. I am not here on this planet in person. That's the job of my telepresence robot. You see that lake? That is molten dihydrogen monoxide. The locals call it water. The commander's snout came up in surprise. Human is absurdly close to it. If that is the case, is it trying to die? I chuckled, amused. No. But you are. Ensign Hernandez, would you say that it's a particularly warm day? She took the cue, as I'd known she would. Sure. It's pretty hot out today. I think I might take a... Unhitching the bottle of water, she took the top off and drank from it. I made my voice dry and professorial. You see, Commander, that liquid she is ingesting is pure water. Dihydrogen monoxides. Duh. She enjoys drinking it. Serena finished drinking, then lifted the bottle and poured some of the contents over her head. Ah, that's better. And yes, I added, she did just pour it over her unprotected brain case and face, in order to cool down. The look on the commander's muzzle was best described as, what in the name of the progenitors am I looking at? How is this possible? Who now, I explained carefully, are an extremely high-temperature species. They routinely shape and work iron and titanium. They handle the forbidden materials with only incidental shielding equipment. Their home planet is only a little over 200 million Isakar from its primary. I turned my sensors so that they captured a good image of the incandescent yellows. They can survive in temperature extremes that would melt you into your component compounds. And yes, they drink molten lava to cool themselves down. They are not a star-traveling race. The Commander Prime Ultra was reaching for anything to deny what was before him. We will simply go around them. Think again. This was my final stroke, my masterpiece. We just gave them faster-than-light technology. They will come to you in their ships, which can withstand anything you can do to them. Radiation, heat, plasma, they own those things. They will shreddy you. Insane. Serena leaned in close to my visual sensors. Had I not known her well, I would have been intimidated. As it was, I saw the Commander Prime Ultra lean back a little. We have a little saying here on Earth, she said in accented but fluent Concordat trade, the language the Commander and I had been speaking to this point. Fuck around and find out. If you think you're tough enough, come right ahead. We willing stand by our allies, and we willing kick your asses. Your call. The Commander Prime Ultra didn't answer for a long moment. When it did, its voice was much less arrogant. There has clearly been a misunderstanding. Our liberation fleet will be ceasing its expeditionary cruise and returning to... We hope there will be no hard feelings over this. That, I said cheerfully, will be up to the humans. I cut the call from my end, secure in the knowledge that those higher in the chain of command from me would be taking it up, and raised my upper right tentacle. You did it, I said. You scared them away. Is this what you call a high five moment? Serena obliged with a slap against the surface of the tentacle. My manipulation nodules weren't quite fingers, neither were there merely 5 of them, but the principle was the same. We did it, she corrected me. I wish I could have seen his face. I'll send you the recording, I promised. Did we just stop a war? I felt as though I wasn't sure which way was up anymore. Sure he did. Serena grinned. It's a good feeling, isn't it? It is. I turned around, looking up at the brilliant yellow sun and white clouds in the blue sky, and for the first time, I truly appreciated them for their beauty. For all that it would kill me in an instant, Earth was a really nice place to be. Okay, BUBBLEVERSE.